Brought to you by Atlassian, AI-powered collaboration software that makes the impossible possible.
I'm Yasmin Gagne.
I'm Josh Christensen.
And this is Most Innovative Companies. On today's episode, awards editor at The Ankler, Katey Rich.
Everyone was looking at each other being like, do you think a rival campaign did it? Do you think there was something to it?
CEO of nutritional supplement beverage company AG1, Kat Cole.
In any market, the presence of growth and competition is an indicator of consumer demand.
And as always, keeping tabs.
The All-Star Game, if you're not familiar, has been a disaster for the NBA for about 15 years now.
But first, here's the download. The news you need to know this week in the world of business and innovation.
There has been a bunch of airline news this week, and this time it's not just Boeing, which
it
is
wouldn't
normally
be, I was
what
gonna
we
say,
talk about.
It's not an MIC podcast without news about a food recall or planes.
We're not even going to get to the FAA stuff. We're going to stick with the companies themselves. First, a Delta passenger jet coming in from Minneapolis made a crash landing at the Toronto Pearson International Airport on Monday afternoon. The jet flipped upside down on the tarmac and lost its tail and wing. No passengers died, though 18 suffered injuries. It could have been so much worse. Thank God it wasn't like the DC crash landing. Meanwhile, Southwest Airlines announced that it will lay off 15% of its employees in an effort to reduce costs and maximize its efficiencies. Which makes me nervous.
You know, there's like some 24-year-old consultant who made a deck and they were like, okay.
Yeah, some new some Wharton grad at McKinsey is like, why don't you just lay off people?
Yeah.
Cool. The layoffs are focused almost entirely on corporate and leadership positions. Southwest expects the layoffs to save the company $210 million in 2025 and about $300 million in 2026. Bag's still free, though. Bag's still free.
And now, welcome to the worst corner in the world. Yes, it's the Elon Musk corner. First, Musk's AI startup unveiled its latest AI model, Grok 3, which it says outperforms cutting-edge models from competitors. According to Musk, based on early testing, which included standardized tests on math, science, and coding, Grok 3 could be more capable than OpenAI and DeepSeek. Okay, we'll believe it when we see it.
Also, just a quick note, every time I see Grok, I think it says Gronk, like
really?
Patriots tight end Rob Gronkowski, and I really want that brand.
There's another
one?
Grok 3 features will be rolled out to premium X users starting Tuesday, so also not the coolest people in the world are getting these features first. There was also some Doge news this week. According to the White House, Elon Musk is actually not an employee of Doge and has no decision-making authority. He is instead a White House employee and senior advisor to the president. Musk can only advise Trump and communicate the president's directives. Okay, well, news to me.
Sure, Jan.
The revelation comes in a lawsuit filed by Democratic attorneys general from several states that alleges that Musk's role in the administration is illegal. They argue that the role violates the separation of powers assigned by the Constitution.
These lawsuits now feel like strongly worded letters.
Yeah, pretty much.
Which is sad because they should be more toothed. Mm-hmm. But at this point, it's just like, oh, how cute, you filed a lawsuit.
Feels like
We're way beyond that.
Yeah, it's like when my co-op board sends an email being like, you have to compost. We're like, okay.
Yaz hates the environment. You heard it here.
No, we composted for a while and we got a fruit fly infestation.
No, that's not great.
Never again.
European defense stocks rallied this week after President Trump threatened to reduce American military support to the continent. Trading pushed the pan-European stocks 600 index to a record high as investors expect Europe's governments to increase military spending. The stock's Europe Total Market Aerospace and Defense Index is up 19% this year. This also comes as senior American and Russian officials met in Saudi Arabia on Tuesday to discuss the end of fighting in Ukraine. Representatives from Europe and Ukraine did not attend.
Now, Coca-Cola is launching its own prebiotic soda brand called Simply Pop. This is to compete with companies like Olipop and Poppi. Now, you may remember the lawsuit against Poppi, which said that you had to drink like 70 cans to get any prebiotic benefits. I don't fully understand this category, but sure. While soda consumption has fallen over the last 2 decades, the popularity of prebiotic sodas has actually skyrocketed as consumers look for quote-unquote healthier options. Simply Pop drinks have no added sugar and contain 25 to 30% real fruit juice, the company says.
Anytime I see a can that says like some percentage real fruit juice,
Yeah.
it's the real that throws me off.
I know, it's like the Welch's Fruit Snacks label. You're
Yeah.
like, what else?
Like, what? Why did you have to
Was opposed to
qualify
fake
as
fruit?
real? Yeah. After being absent for almost a month, ByteDance's TikTok and CapCut apps are back in the Apple and Google app stores. Within hours of the app's return, TikTok was the #1 most downloaded app on the App Store, while CapCut was #4. Although the apps have reappeared, the TikTok ban has not gone away. It is currently just paused. The pause lasts until the first week of April, and the ban will go back into effect unless Congress repeals or alters the Protecting American from Foreign Adversaries Control Applications Act, or PFACA, as we know. Quick note that I think is kind of funny. Do you remember on eBay after the ban went into effect, but app stores didn't have TikTok back, and people were selling phones with it downloaded for like $10,000? Those poor people who bought those
We
phones.
had to get in on that. We should have gotten in on that.
I should have just sold my phone.
Yeah, totally. And that's the news you need to know today. So, Josh, do you have any movies that you're rooting for at the Oscars or any performances?
Well, as a theater kid, I feel like I do have to stand for Wicked a little bit overall. There are some legit categories that I do think it is. It shouldn't
some
win
categories.
It
That's
shouldn't
what I'm
win
saying.
Best
Yeah.
Picture. I thought the sound design, I know this
that's
is a
fair.
really niche
That's
thing,
fair.
but I actually thought the sound design and what the sound department did on that film was really exceptional and additive in a way that I don't hear in a lot of movies. But the movie I'm rooting for most for the big awards is Conclave.
You and me both,
I
man.
fucking loved Conclave. It was so good. Ralph Fiennes was incredible. I know.
Did Tucci get a nomination?
Tucci didn't get a nomination.
surprising
Lithgow
to me.
didn't get a nomination.
I didn't think Lithgow was that good. I thought Tucci was really good.
He was just Lithgow just didn't have as much to do, and I thought
Lithgow
he was
doesn't
very
really
good.
ever move me.
I do like John Lithgow. It depends on the performance. Like he's a very specific type. He's very broad, I think, in most of his roles. Like it's very much like a very theater style. I thought the Tooch was great. I thought the guy who played Tedesco was incredible.
Yeah, that guy was awesome.
The guy who played Benitez I thought was great, although just like maybe 6 lines in the whole show. But it was really all about
Actually,
Ray.
I thought what's-her-face was Isabella Rossellini was so good.
Yeah, as Agnes, as
As
Sister
the insane
Agnes.
nun.
She was so good.
I was terrified of her.
I was, and her speech in the cafeteria was awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So that's who I'm rooting for, but there's pretty much a wide open field in this year's Oscars, so we're going to dive into it because it's been an insane campaign.
So every year, Hollywood studios invest heavily in marketing campaigns. I mean, we're talking tens of millions of dollars spent to best position their movie to win the industry's most prestigious award. Now, some movies recall Crash and The Green Book.
Oof. Shakespeare in Love?
Yeah, I actually really like Shakespeare in Love.
I do, but it beat Saving Private Ryan. That was
that's
insane.
wild. Yeah, that is crazy. Now, this year, unlike recent years, there's been what seems like a nonstop controversy with Oscar nominees like Netflix's Emilia Perez and indie period drama The Brutalist. We wanted to get into what happened with this year's press runs and campaigns, the role of fan or stan culture on the internet, and of course, what AI has to do with all of this. So we invited the Anklers Awards editor, Katey Rich, who's been following this year's storylines. Katey, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
I think we got to start this discussion by talking about Emilia Perez.
What an implosion of an Oscars campaign.
What a saga.
So for listeners who've been living under a rock, its star, Carla Sofia Gascon, has a history of making racist and Islamophobic old tweets. Those went viral. Tell me, how did that happen? Like, who uncovered them? Is there a big conspiracy here?
I don't think there's a conspiracy. This is this thing that when I was in Los Angeles last, I saw a lot of awards reps just over the course of the weekend, and kind of everyone was looking at each other being like, do you think a rival campaign did it? Do you think there was something to it? But I really do think this is a situation in which the simplest public explanation is the obvious one, which is that Sarah Hagi, who's a journalist.
I like Hagi a lot.
Yeah, me too.
Oh, yeah, she's really good. And she's also the kind of person who, like, this kind of has a good bullshit detector.
Yeah.
Like, she's been on social media long enough to kind of get a sense of when someone might have other bad things in their history, which is exactly what happened with Carla Sofia Gascon. She had used, I think, the word Islamist in an interview or in a tweet, and Sarah said, I bet there's more to that, and was dead on.
And it's so funny because she could have just not done that.
She could have not
I mean?
done that. It was reminiscent of when that girl on Love is Blind said she was a patriot and everyone clocked it immediately. Is that a weird connection
There
to make?
definitely are some like dog whistles for if you have been on the internet long enough, you can figure out the correlation between those two things. And, I think the first question everyone had was like, Netflix is this massive company. They have a huge awards team. I mean, you talk to other awards campaigns and they're always jealous of how many people Netflix has. And no one there had ever gone back through Carla Sofia Gascon's old tweets. And the thing that I learned is that like there are some parts of the entertainment industry where you will go back and check someone's history. Like, Love is Blind example. Like if you work on a reality show, you will go back through people's past history because who knows what
Not
you're going to
enough.
find.
Not on Love is Blind.
Well, they're supposed to.
Yeah.
But I think for these, it's one of those things where the Netflix assumes that her personal reps had done it. Maybe her personal reps assumes that Netflix had done it, or someone who she was working with when she had her career in Mexico or in Spain before that, and everyone figured someone else had done it. And now I think you will see it as a very set policy. If you have, say Selena Gomez, who's also in Amelia Perez, no one has to go through her socials with a fine-tooth comb. She's been famous for too long. There's not going to be a secret there. But someone like Carla Sofia Gascon, who was pretty obscure when she was posting all this stuff on Twitter, no one would have had any way of knowing it was there, but it was very easy to find and had a lot of ramifications when it was.
Well, and on top of that, after it was found, Carla did not tell her PR team and gave an interview about the whole thing. How did that happen?
Yes. She sent a statement to The Hollywood Reporter. I think she sent it to the reporter who had done a profile on her previously. So she kind of got in touch directly and then set up an interview with CNN Espanol separately from that. I'm not 100% clear if her personal reps are involved in that. They haven't really been talking. So my guess would be that they would have told her not to, but they can always tell her not to, and then she does it anyway. I think most people get to this point in an Oscar campaign where they will follow what the studio tells them to do. People who wind up in the Oscar season, they're like, excuse me, where am I going? Why am I in Santa Barbara? Like, what is this event? Who am I? Like, they have no reason to know all this stuff, so they do what Netflix tells them to do. But I think Carla is doing something that you've seen a lot of people do when they get in trouble. They're like, no. If I can just explain myself, like, if I just can just keep talking, you'll understand me. But it was the opposite. It completely backfired. And at the very least, after those two kind of rogue interviews, she has retreated a little bit and hopefully let some of this die down. I guess if she shows up at the Oscars, we'll see how much it's actually died down.
There was already controversy around the film just from the creative, the response from the trans community. So I feel like the community rallying around Carla Sofia was just not going to happen either at that point.
Yeah.
For a number of reasons.
Yeah, this is the interesting thing where it gets into like marketing and maybe more of like what you guys usually talk about is that like Netflix had this movie that was a French movie set in Mexico, filmed, I think, in France with, Zoe Saldana and Selena Gomez, who doesn't speak Spanish, Zoe Saldana, who is American. A lot of cultures kind of meshing together. And the director, Jacques Audiard, kind of taking this approach, being like, well, why wouldn't I just be able to tell this story? Like, questions of representation and authenticity were just not top of mind for anybody making this movie, even though Carla Sofia Gascon, as the first trans Best Actress nominee, a huge moment for representation, which is still there despite the way her reputation has crumbled. So Netflix picks up this movie at Cannes and I think kind of sees a lane to be like, this movie could be this triumph for trans representation. It could be this like feel-good story about being your authentic self. And they kind of build a campaign around that idea, even though I think if you see the movie, it's kind of wonkier and weirder and in some ways more interesting than that. It's not like a straightforward uplifting saga. It's an odd duck. So then when you have Carla Sofia Gascon, who's really the big standard bearer of how this movie can make history, kind of tarnishing her public reputation, it really makes that whole campaign collapse. It's way bigger than just a single person.
Has Netflix been able to sort of pivot its strategy? Do you think that'll work? And also, do you think Carla Sofia Gascon's Oscars campaign is just dead at this point?
Oh, yeah. Her campaign is dead. Like, that's I think that's not a question. There were various events in Los Angeles the week before last that she could have been at that she was not at. I think Netflix has worked very hard to kind of isolate her. And Zoe Saldana has said that she doesn't support what she said. And Jacques Audiard has said something that's like, why is she hurting us? It's very dramatic. But I think
So French.
Netflix has pivoted to Zoe Saldana. And like, she was already the movie's best chance of winning. Like, I think that and maybe original song are still pretty likely for it. International feature as well. well. And Zoe is a pro. She's been in Hollywood for a long time. She knows how to talk to these rooms. She was at the Directors Guild, the Producers Guild, the Critics' Choice Awards, all these award shows that were happening. She was at the BAFTAs as well. Like, she's been working the room. She's really a good spokesperson for this movie in general and kind of for herself and for what the movie can stand for, separate from whatever the lead actress might say.
BAFTA, thank you. Thank you. This was a creative challenge of a lifetime. How do you begin to even approach a film that just defies categorization?
A lot of people who work in the business will say, like, you shouldn't have to suffer for what your co-star did, you know? Like, they can have worked well together. That doesn't mean Zoe believes in all the things that Carla posted. I think Netflix has done a good job kind of supporting her and building her up. And, like, Netflix has only ever won one acting award ever for all of the Oscar campaigns they've done. This would be their
Which one did they win?
Laura Dern for Marriage Story.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So, and like for all the money they spent on awards campaigns, like that's kind of a crazy stat. So like Zoe winning matters a lot and I think will still happen. And they've done a good job kind of isolating her from the blast radius of everything else.
You brought up Carla Sofia's old tweets, and we'll move on after this, but some publicists have criticized Netflix for sort of abandoning their duty of care to a relative newcomer. And I'm curious what you think about that.
Yeah, it's a really good question because I think Netflix doesn't have a choice. Like, they have to distance themselves from her, right? Yeah. Like, they can't look like they're saying, like, oh, what she said was not so bad. Because in this Oscar voting period, you know, we're talking on the last day of Oscar voting, like, every minute, every, like, visibility thing counts. But I think that's a question of when someone is a new star, when someone's on a reality show, when someone is, like, not used to any of this, like, they're going to follow your guidance. And if you kind of leave them to their own devices, like, I think that if she put out a statement via Netflix first before all these rogue interviews happened. And I think after that, they probably could have continued to work together. But it was the going rogue thing. It was, you know, it may have been a breach of literal contract or just kind of a breach of trust. And I think that other people who find themselves in a similar position where they're kind of new to this and need guidance will probably learn from that and say, I'll just follow everything you say. But that's not to say that Netflix knows what's best for you at all times. They just know how to best navigate this campaign. And I don't think they could have done anything differently, but I do think it's a valid question of, like, you know, how much does the studio that's running your Oscar campaign really care about you as a person? It applies to everybody, probably.
I think when we're talking about all this, but it is also fair to say those tweets were incredibly offensive. And, And, you know, it's like, does Netflix have a duty of care to, you know, like,
well, they also
like,
have
you know what I mean? Like,
they also have a duty of care to Zoe Saldana and the other nominees in the film. And it's like, it became a choice. And it worked out. Zoe Saldana won the BAFTA. We'll see what happens at the Oscars in a week and a half, a little bit over that now. But they did have a duty of care for Zoe Saldana, which seemed incongruous with supporting Carla Sofia.
Viewers.
Humanity.
And I don't think it's reasonable. Like, if there had been headlines, you know, if Carla had, like, had a scandal at a previous film job and said mean things in the press, like, if there had been, like, headlines about her, I think that would have been a reasonable thing to say. They should have known this. But, like, old tweets is a really gray area of, like, how, you know, if you're applying for a job, someone might search through that. But, like, if you're a studio picking up a movie, you didn't make it, it's already made. Like, is that something you could be expected to do? Again, I think other people will do that now, and Netflix will as well. But I don't know how reasonable it is to have said, like, oh, they should have been able to find this.
Now, you've been following the awards season this year, and I want to talk about how studios have been kind of supporting and marketing their movies. We talked a little bit about Netflix. What else have you seen in that realm?
I mean, I think Anora may emerge as the real story at the end. Like, it does still feel like the Best Picture frontrunner right now, which is very entertaining because it won the Palme d'Or at Cannes last May. And everyone said, oh, okay, well, you know, Palme d'Or winners have been nominated for Best Picture for the last 5 years. Like, it's backed by Neon, which won Best Picture with Parasite, which was the first Palme d'Or winner to win Best Picture in, like, 60 years.
Yeah, I was going to say, I feel like Palme d'Or is usually like I don't know if this will actually happen.
Exactly.
You know?
And also ran sort of,
Yeah, or like an arty thing that's never going to catch on with the Academy. But the way the Academy has changed in the last decade or so, where they have really expanded the membership, it's a lot more international. It's a lot more clued in with something like that. Like Parasite winning was such a watershed moment of being like, oh, this is possible. Like, it's not too weird. The definition of what is too weird to be an Oscar movie keeps shifting. I mean, The Substance, I don't think it's going to win Best Picture, but the fact that it's nominated is like... But the fact that it's nominated is like, wow, okay, the guardrails are really different from how they used to be.
Also distributed by Mubi, which was also like kind of a crazy thing. We can talk about that. We can stay on the track.
Yeah, movie's been a fascinating story for the last couple seasons. So Anora goes into the fall festival season being like, well, it's the front runner, but like, we'll see what else comes out. We'll see if everyone's really crazy about A Complete Unknown or Wicked or whatever. And then we head into the Directors Guild Awards, the Producers Guild Awards, and Critics' Choice, which were all in the same weekend, which they weren't supposed to be. The Critics' Choice Awards got delayed from January because of the fires. So kind of this conflation of all these events happened by accident. And then Anora wins all three when we were all expecting it to be this crazy split field. And for a movie that was made for $6 million, it's the smallest budget of the Best Picture lineup, to win Producers Guild, which is often very it's producers. They support the business. They're based in Hollywood. They want kind of the big deal movies. It just showed such a strong base of support. Sean Baker, the director, has been out there really talking about theatrical releases and how important it was to have that movie in theaters. It was a pretty good size box office hit for the size movie that it was. And Neon has been really insistent on that.
Also, Neon, thank you so much for supporting us, for knowing that we made this movie for the big screen and putting everything into the theatrical release.
And it's not about Netflix, but it's not about Netflix. So the way that they have put themselves that way as savers of theatrical in an industry that I think really wants to hear that, it's been a really smart move. And it's worked very well on behalf of a really great movie that I think would be a very worthy winner.
Excited to see Sean Baker's next project on Apple TV+.
Well, I don't know. I truly don't know if he will. I think he has leverage now. I mean, Apple released Killers of the Flower Moon in theaters for a while and made a good amount of money. So they have, they're not Netflix in terms of refusing it, but yes, it's possible. But Netflix has never won Best Picture. And I think the theatrical release is a huge thing that is keeping them from doing that, and was a barrier in the way of Emilia Perez even before the scandal broke out, because I think the Academy still has enough people who know that the money is in theatrical releases. They get residuals when their movies go in theaters. They understand the threat that's there. And I think when you have this still relatively small group of 10,000 or so people, even based all around the world, they want to support theatrical movie going when they can. Oppenheimer winning Best Picture is not an accident about, relative to its box office success. That is still something the Academy is really invested in.
Speaking of Oppenheimer, that seemed to me like a sort of clear frontrunner last year. This year, there isn't quite that, and I'm curious how studios have kind of changed their strategy and positioned themselves for the top prize. So I know we talked a little bit about Anora, but let's talk about some of the other ones, like Conclave.
Yeah, no, Conclave also has a good slogan on billboards in LA that says, your choice changes everything, which is very, very appropriately dramatic with with Conclave, which is a movie I really like a lot.
I loved Conclave.
Loved Conclave.
See, you guys, well, this is why, there's been a running thread of speculation that it could be a Best Picture contender, even though, it won the BAFTA. It was pretty close to a British film, it was pretty international, but it had a hometown advantage. But, the Best Picture is voted on this preferential ballot. So it's not just that you pick one movie, but you say, okay, Anora's my number one, but then what's my second favorite? And the way the process works, say you want to get to a 50% threshold, but your second, third, fourth place votes can matter a lot.
The way that would have changed the papacy voting process.
Yeah, exactly. I was going to say Conclave's role is very much mirroring
I know.
the movie
is
itself.
Cardinal Lawrence going to pull through?
Yeah,
and
who is
win
the
Best
Benitez
Picture?
of this race is the question you have to ask yourself.
That's true. I'm more concerned about who's the Tedesco.
I know.
And
yeah,
I think it's the brutalist.
No,
Ooh,
man.
it might be
I
Emilia Perez.
think Tedesco is Emilia Perez.
Oh, yeah.
Just
that's
or
right.
Adeyemi.
Yeah, that's
I think I
right.
can pick a few in there. Conclave is such a blast.
Strangely enough, Adeyemi, Wicked. Didn't see that coming.
It's Conclave and A Complete Unknown are both the kind of really broadly liked. A lot of people are going to tell you they really like this movie, and they might not feel the depth of passion about it, but they're also not likely to be oh, it's my least favorite movie. I'm going to put it at the very
liked
bottom.
A Complete Unknown a lot.
I did as well. Yeah.
It's
I thought
a
it was
really
good.
good movie. I thought it was going to win the Producers Guild Award because it's a Hollywood product. James Mangold has been working in Hollywood for a really long time. He finally got that Best Director Oscar nomination. I don't really know why it didn't, but just because the field is so split would be my best guess.
Are musicals back?
Is A Complete Unknown a musical? I guess.
I don't know. It walks the line.
Yeah.
See what I did
Wow.
there?
That was good. I mean, I think after Wicked,
Emilia Perez.
But
Yeah.
remember Cats? I feel like
Well, I know, but
we're
when
just-
Cats happened,
but
Tom Hooper ruined musicals for
What I'm
movie
saying,
musicals.
though, is that all it takes is one more Cats, and then we'll have a dry spell
Well,
for
they
years.
didn't market musicals as musicals. Wonka, the Timothée Chalamet Wonka, they were
which
no,
was
this isn't a musical.
huge hit.
And it was actually good, Yeah.
But they
Yeah.
were like, it's not a musical. And then you get there and they're like, surprise, it's a musical.
Well, even the first trailers for Wicked didn't have any songs in them. And it was very like, why are we or like Mean Girls, the Mean Girls musical came out in theaters, which was pretty good and was
Yeah, I liked
marketed
it.
not as a musical. And I think you got like kids who like showed up and were like, I can't believe there's music in this. But then they go see it. And like, I mean, the thing is, people like musicals. Like, there's a reason the genre has been around for so long. But like, you know, in 2021, we had In the Heights and West Side Story come out. Like In the Heights, directed by John M. Chu, who made Wicked. Terrific movie. I think it's a better movie than Wicked, personally.
Oh, yeah,
and
by a lot.
And it was supposed to be this big return to theaters moment, and it just didn't quite do that well. And West Side Story was a similar thing. Spielberg movie, fantastic movie.
Oh, yeah.
Won an Oscar, but like still didn't make that much money. So I think there was a lot of
Well, it also
a
had
lot
the
of fear
Ansel
around it.
Elgort, like, sandbagging.
Yeah, that was
oh boy. Yeah, speaking of like people in a cast who you may want to distance yourself from.
That was
it's
also
seriously.
a known thing, though. Like the
Yeah, it
Ansel
was.
Elgort thing
Yeah.
was genuine malpractice.
Yeah.
Like, everybody knew.
Yeah, but also the thing of like, how much do you judge someone for a mistake that they've made, which is a thing that
Yeah,
Hollywood
it's like if
likes
they're
to
not
do over and over
convicted of a
again.
crime or like there's
Yeah,
no tweet.
that's true. But
yeah,
the real
and he
crime
hadn't
was his
said
singing.
racist things on Twitter. I
Yeah.
don't think. I gotta
Yeah.
go back and look.
Oh,
So
who knows?
I am curious, you know, studios have been known for using dirty tricks. I mean, we talked about all these theories about Carlos Sofia Gascon's tweets. But this year there's been another campaign like that, and it's all to do with The Brutalist and its use of AI,
Yeah.
which seems actually pretty widespread and normal. But tell us a little bit more about that controversy.
Yeah, that was like the warm-up controversy we had this season that we thought would be the thing until
Yeah.
Amelia Perez like blew it out of the water. But yeah, it was this interview that the editor had given. And like 9 days after this interview on this pretty obscure website got posted, it blew up on Twitter and Blue Sky, I guess. I don't really use Twitter or X anymore. So, but it kind of started from Timothy Chalamet fan accounts. And so the
Club
question
Chalamet.
becomes, is it
Club
no.
Chalamet at it again?
I think Club Chalamet did post about it, but it was a different one. The Chalamet universe is vast. So it raises the question again, like, is this the fans gathering together, scouring the internet, finding a thing because like they're savvy about this kind of thing? Or could it have been a rival studio? And when you talk to people who kind of know these people, they're like, it's not really their style. Like Searchlight is backing this movie. They've won Best Picture a lot. They've never really been linked to these kind of dirty tricks campaigns before. So I kind of lean toward thinking it's the fans. And especially because if you work in the industry at all, you would read that story and say, okay, it used a respeecher, it used this technology that cleans up dialogue. It's really not that different from traditional ADR, like a very standard practice on a film set. And then immediately after that, you realize Amelia Perez used the same thing to clean up accents and to expand vocal ranges. It's auto-tune, like something that's been around forever. So I think if it had been an industry person who started it, it might not have traveled that far. It might and because it mostly got floated by people who are like, oh my God, AI in movies, we can't do this.
Yep.
Rather than people who have actually worked in the business. So I lean toward the Chalamet fans on that one, but it's a little bit more of a fuzzy area, I think.
And speaking of The Brutalist, I'm a fan of Adrian Brody, not least because I think he kind of looks like my husband. And he's been stopped on the street several times and asked if he looks like Adrian Brody.
No, it's true. He does look a little
But
like...
Does he get mistaken for Adrian Brody or just told he looks like Adrian
He
Brody?
got mistaken for Adrian Brody on a ski slope.
Oh, really?
Wow.
And I was like, what?
What, did they think that somehow Adrian Brody got a very heavy tan?
But
Colombian Adrian Brody.
exactly. But I am curious about his Oscar campaign because I feel like I can't go anywhere without seeing a feature or profile of Adrian Brody. I mean, tell me about that and talk about a weird career.
Super weird career.
yeah.
Like if I looked up his 2010s recently, like what the movies he was in, and it is so
Grand Budapest Hotel.
Well, he's in the Grand Budapest Hotel. So he's worked with Wes Anderson, but other than that, has been like almost nowhere. I mean, he started showing back up in Succession a couple years ago. And that
Yeah.
was kind of his comeback.
Yeah.
But yeah, he has been absolutely everywhere. The weekend that there were all these award shows in LA, he was not only at all the award shows, he went to the Pasadena Humane Society and like cuddled with kittens who had been displaced by the fires.
That People
Which is-
magazine pickup.
Yeah. And so meanwhile, Timothy Chalamet, who is incredibly famous, way more famous than Adrian Brody, like as, you know, top of the world box office wise, didn't go to any of those events. And that's totally his business. And he's been out promoting A Complete Unknown. He's done very well by that movie. It's making money. But Adrian Brody's been playing kind of the ground game, like shaking hands with all of these people in this way that I think he knows he has to do because he hasn't been in these rooms for such a long time. You know, it's been 20 plus years since he won his Oscar.
Yeah.
But it's really worked. And like that performance is terrific. And I think even people who kind of quibble with The Brutalist and its second half and how long it is, like, you can't really see that movie without that performance grabbing you by the throat.
I'm sorry. Have I upset you?
No. Not at all. Did not realize these images were still available, much less of any consequence. May I keep these?
So he's really done the work to kind of like help remind people of his performance and how much they liked it and be in person and, you know, make those connections with people. And I think it's been really effective.
Now, Oscar viewership has declined for many factors. I do think the slap kind of revived people's interest in it. But
boy.
Viewership generally seems to be on an upswing. Why do you think that is? Like, what are the factors that are playing a role in its revival? I feel like people are talking about the Oscar race now.
That's a great thing. Well, because like I am in such a bubble where I'm never not talking about the Oscar race. And so many people who I know are. So then, but there's like people in my life, you know, around this time of year, like my neighbor came over and was like, "What's the deal with Amelia Perez?" I was like, it's time. Like everyone is paying attention again. I just don't know how much to count on ratings for anything that's not football going up. You know, like award show ratings are going down. And you totally understand why. Like you have the option to turn it off and go put on literally anything on Netflix instead of watching the In Memoriam segment. Like for people who don't love this stuff, like I get why it's going down. I mean, Barbie and Oppenheimer made perfect sense to me as a way to boost ratings. I mean, the I'm Just Ken musical number is something that even if you didn't see it live, you watch that on YouTube. Like that's a huge cultural penetration moment. I think there's every reason to believe that they'll do something with Wicked. Wicked's not nominated for original song. He didn't have any, but like if they don't do a Defying Gravity moment on stage, like what are we even doing here? So I hope numbers continue to go up. Like I think that if you work for the Academy or for ABC, you need to care about Oscar ratings, and otherwise it doesn't matter. Like the Oscars are an industry party and they should be fun to watch, but I just don't care that much if 12 million or 15 million people watch them.
Do you think Wicked being absolutely everywhere has made it into so many, it like resulted in it being nominated so many times?
Oh, what a good question. Probably. I think because it's a hit. Like, I think if it had been everywhere and was kind of a disappointment, we would be in a different spot. But I think the Oscars like to reward a hit, especially when it's something that, like, wasn't totally a guarantee. Like, Top Gun Maverick was such a big one. Like, that movie kind of came back.
Top Gun Maverick.
I love Top Gun Maverick. It made a bunch of money at this point, you know, in 2022, where we were, like, genuinely worried people wouldn't go back to theaters ever again. Oppenheimer and Barbie, similar thing. Like, I think if Barbie had been a decent hit, but not a huge one, it never would have gotten all those Oscar nominations, even though they were well-deserved. So yeah, similar with Wicked. Like when something is like well-made and then does really well, the Oscars are very wise to embrace it.
Now, we're a couple weeks away from the Oscars. Do you think the controversies are over, or are we going to see something develop in this time? This is famous last words.
Surprise?
Oh my God. Well, again, like as we're speaking, Oscar voting is almost over. So if anyone wants to act up, they can do it safely because the ballots will already be filed.
Carla Sofia Gascon doing a ton of unsanctioned interviews as soon as voting is
God.
If she shows up for the SAG Awards, like that will be fascinating.
Ariana Grande readopts her black scent.
You know, the Ariana Grande fans have been surprisingly quiet through this whole thing. Like, they've been, you know, obviously supporting her and supporting Wicked, but, like, they haven't been, like, stirring shit up the way that I thought they might be capable of. So maybe that's what's coming next.
Maybe it's because, like, they focus so much on her relationship.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Yeah, well. Yeah, get ready for those jokes at the
Oh my God,
Oscars.
Oh my God, yeah.
But yeah, the SAG Awards are this weekend, so that has the potential to be the time when things start back up. But I think everyone's been on pretty good behavior. Like after the Carla stuff blew up, I think a lot of campaigns were like, we're going to do the bare minimum. Everyone stay still. Don't open your mouth. We're going to get through this. And then you have people like Zoe Saldana or Demi Moore who are like really disciplined and on message and are not going to stray absolutely no matter what. So I don't know, maybe Kieran Culkin is the X factor we need to look out for. He seems like he can be a loose cannon.
Yeah, he will give a good speech.
Last question for you. What or who do you want to see win? Are there any of these races that you really care about?
Personally.
Ooh.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I watched all the shorts, and I don't know how much anyone wants to get me into the shorts, but I feel like you often wind up with a personal favorite in those. Like there's an animated short from France called Yuck that's about kids learning about kissing. That's really cute
awesome.
that I would really love to win.
I need to watch that too.
I'm a big fan of The Brutalist. I am rooting for it in a lot of ways.
It's a movie me and Josh haven't seen because it's long.
It's very long. I
long.
did see it's available at home now, so you have the option, but you gotta
somewhere
really...
where I can eat a lot of food during. I think is...
that would be a good move.
Yeah, I'll probably watch it this weekend. Both days.
Is it like gripping or is it like a homeworky movie?
No, I think it's pretty gripping, especially in the first half. Like I think the second half, like the disappointment of the American dream kind of sets in because that's what it's about. But like I think in the first half, like, you know, the score is really fantastic. And what I was going to say is like the score by Daniel Blumberg is one of the things I'm really rooting hard for. Although I also rewatched The Wild Robot with my kids last weekend. And I was
good.
I was like, oh my God,
cute.
the score, they don't stand a chance. The score is so good. Chris Bauer, the guy who composed it, actually already has an Oscar for Best Live Action Short. But he's like kind of an up-and-coming composer. He's young. So honestly, either of them could win. I think one of them will win. But also the production design in The Brutalist is incredible. You know, they recreate all of these like massive Brutalist buildings. Like the whole movie is about building this huge community center, but they didn't actually build it because it would cost a fortune. So the way they faked it and moved around it, like, is really exceptional. So that's one of the things I'm rooting for. I think if Emilia Perez were still really in the running, there'd be a lot of anxiety about how wide open it is. But like, there's not really a lot of bad choices I think could get made in the end.
Yeah, I think you're right. I actually really liked Edward Norton in A Complete Unknown.
He's so
random, but I thought he was so
Unknown.
great, and I feel like nobody talks about it.
Yeah. He's like the most likable person who's ever been on screen, and Edward Norton is so famous for these like intense kind of like prickly roles.
And like it's hard to stand out playing a extremely decent person, and I feel like he really did.
Yeah.
I absolutely love your music. I'm such a big fan, Mr. Seeger.
Pete. Harold's putting the lean on you there? Trying to get you to play?
Yeah, a little bit.
All right, well, don't hold it against him. It's for a good cause.
Yeah, I had a theory for a while that he could kind of sneak up from behind and Best Supporting Actor. And Kieran Culkin has just been so dominant that, like, I don't know, like maybe the SAG Awards have a surprise for us. But yeah, he's wonderful in that movie. You're totally right.
Katey, thank you so much for coming on the show and talking all things Oscars.
Oh my God, always.
If you got something wrong, we'll call you out.
Oh, I know we'll get something wrong.
Next episode or whatever.
We have our pundits page at the Ankler now where we all have to like put our predictions down. And like, I just like, I always get something wrong. Again, like I watch all the shorts and then that never helps me actually get it right. So I try not to put too much stock in it.
And where can we find you?
Oh, yeah. So at theankler.com, you can find the Prestige Junkie newsletter and also the podcast. Podcast is available on all of your various podcast platforms. And then I'm on Blue Sky and Letterboxd at Katey Rich, KateyRich.
So we'll be back with Katey for keeping tabs. But first, a quick break, followed by my interview with Kat Cole from AG1.
G'day, we're Atlassian. We make team collaboration software like Jira, Confluence, and Loom, which power enterprise businesses around the world, including 83% of the Fortune 500. With Atlassian, you'll unlock AI-powered teamwork, which means more time doing the work that matters. In fact, our customers experience a 25% reduction in project duration per year. So you'll have more time to listen to podcasts. Unleash the potential of your team at Atlassian.com. That's Atlassian.com. Atlassian.
Kat Cole built a career selling sweet treats to grocery store consumers as the Chief Operating Officer and President of North America for Focus Brands. She was also the president of Focus Brands' subsidiary Cinnabon. Prior to that, she was a waitress at Hooters before working her way up the chain and becoming a vice president of the company. But in 2024, she started to work on healthy products, becoming the CEO of AG1, formerly known as Athletic Greens, a company that sells green powder filled with vitamins and nutrients valued at $1.2 billion in 2022. The brand has been endorsed by athletes like Olympic runner Allison Felix and Formula One driver Lewis Hamilton, as well as an endless roster of wellness and fitness influencers. I know I can't get away from it on my Instagram. I will say some doctors have questioned the need for supplements like multivitamins altogether. I spoke to Kat about growing AG1's business and whether she thinks the products will ever end up in grocery aisles. Kat, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So I don't know if you remember this, but I actually interviewed you once before.
I remember.
Quite a few years ago, I wrote a piece about Milk Bar.
Yep.
You're on the board.
Yep.
And I think at the time you were still president and chief operating officer at Focus Brands.
I was.
Which owns retailers like Cinnabon and Carvel, some of my favorites. And though both of those companies sell consumer products, Athletic Greens is a lot healthier.
Those are fun for you, not good for you.
Exactly.
Let's be clear.
How does a former fast food executive come to run a health and wellness company?
Oh, I love this question. There's a few ways. One is the journey that I've gone on as a person, as a woman in the world, as now a mom. And over time, how nutrition and health has become more important to me personally. Certainly when I was in my 20s, I was the president of Cinnabon when I was 31 years old.
Yeah.
And not only is there an age dynamic to that, there's also we're so much more informed now. Even people who are in their 30s are thinking of health span and nutrition. Yeah. And so as I matured and as things in life occurred, like my mom getting breast cancer when my kids were very small and she was starting her business. I had my kids at 39 and 41. I had a few miscarriages in between. Like there are just things that are real life that put nutrition and health more squarely in my focus as an individual. So at home, how I live. But that over time became a bigger part of one where I believe consumers were going and therefore what the market opportunity in business would be. But also became a part of my personal values that I wanted to see reflected in the companies that I run. So that's a big part of it. It's just my personal journey.
Yeah.
Then if I am a leader over time that has experience running companies at scale, 10 years ago, there weren't a lot of scaled, really healthful nutrition companies that made sense for someone like me to manage. Now there are. You'd have to be with a startup 10, 15 years ago if you were going to run a health or nutrition company. Most of them were very young and just getting off the ground. And now, certainly with AG1, and there are many other companies that are high quality, leading the industry, truly healthful and looking to raise the standard in the industry, and big enough to make a difference for me to come in and lead for this chapter.
That makes a lot of sense. Do you still have any guilty pleasures, though? Do you have a Cinnabon once in a while?
That was a bygone era for me, although the aroma.
Or Milk Bar? Milk Bar.
But, it's funny that there were so many other brands. People know me for Cinnabon because it was so well known.
Yeah.
But it was only one of the 8 brands that we had. And so we had brands like Jamba Juice and Moe's Southwest Grill, where I was so proud of the work we did in the early days of paleo, keto, protein bowls. So I did actually have these brands where I could bring healthfulness to bear. But even for me now, I view the opportunity to indulge outside of a more healthful diet as still something that's super fun, but I also see lots of more healthful ways to indulge. I've learned more healthful ways to indulge, but absolutely I treat myself with ice cream once in a while or a cookie. I have a 5-year-old and a 7-year-old.
So you're human.
I'm human. I am not a robot. And I also have come to believe, I used to say everything in moderation, right? Everything in moderation. And now I think that phrase, in some cases, has been used to the extreme where in aggregate, a few things in moderation are no longer moderation. And so I think very seriously about what my kids see me eat, how we make decisions, when I treat myself, how I treat myself. I don't overthink it.
Yeah.
But my operating system for my nutrition and my home and how I think about putting more positive deposits into my body for the occasions where I might not have access to the most healthful food, or where I want to treat myself with something super more on the fun for you versus good for you spectrum. That's how I think about it.
During COVID, I remember writing about the sales of multivitamins and just supplements in general rose something like 50%.
Yeah, exploded.
Compared with the same period, the year prior to COVID. And maybe because of that, as you mentioned, there's now a ton of supplements, sort of health food companies on the market. Even though AG1 had been around for a long time, how do you think about competing in this newer environment?
There's a few layers to this that I think are really interesting. One is, in any market, the presence of growth and competition is an indicator of consumer demand, which is, in general, a good thing. And so as it relates to health and wellness, if there are more consumers demanding more options, then that means those consumers are going on a health awareness journey. And so as a business person, that means I'm in the right space. It's a very exciting space to be in consumer, but it also means the downside of competition and muddiness, which is it's over time. Customers have more options. We as consumers have more options. It also can get tougher and tougher to appreciate the distinction between those options. So when I think about both AG1 and running this incredible company that's leading the nutrition space, known for this daily health drink, I think about the things that are required to stand out today that may not have been on customers' minds as much 10 years ago. So that's things like human clinical trials and research for supplements that is not required of the industry, but is what we have invested in for years. I think about third-party certifications. We've been NSF for sport for 8 or 9 years, which is a third-party certification that not only verifies what's on the label is in the product, which is a question people have about supplements. It also ensures there are no contaminants or doping agents. And so we pay a third party to keep our product all the way through the supply chain in check. It is not required by the customer. Actually, the average American customer doesn't even know what NSF for sport is. But that's what you have to do to keep leading an industry. You have to do things before they're required. You have to do them to a higher level than even the average consumer gives you credit for. And then the next layer of how I think about it is those are things we've always done. But years ago, we actually didn't brag about it. We didn't talk about it enough. It was there. It was on the package. It was on our website. But we didn't market it because there was so much demand. People were just looking, where do I buy it? How do I get it? And can I get the best value by subscribing? Now it's that, and we are showing, proving. If you go on our site now, there are deep rabbit holes of certificates of analysis, proof of the third-party studies we do. It's different and in ways that I think are mostly really great for the consumer and the space, but it's a different approach to education, information, and go-to-market.
I think I heard in another interview you did that, and I'll be honest, this is my assumption, was that most AG1 consumers were men. Kind of biohacky dudes.
I assumed that as well when I was an early customer. I thought I was this outlier lady who was down with the foundational nutritional supplement, but I was very wrong.
Yeah, so I heard you say the customer base is sort of split 50-50. Tell me more about
50-50.
That consumer and how that happened.
You know, it's interesting. I've thought once I got into the business and I saw the demographic split and then, of course, leaned into just selfishly wanting to acquire more women on this journey, like bring more women on the health journey and accelerate that shift to a more female customer base. But it was still pretty strong when I joined. It was like 40% when I joined, or trending that way. And now it's 50-50. And so I thought, why didn't I realize this? Why did I think I was so special? There's lots of other women who are doing this too, super smart. One reason might be that some of our more popular creator partners, thought leaders, academics, people with big podcasts or platforms were male.
I saw Andrew Huberman did something with AG1.
Totally. And there are others, like great thought leaders in various spaces of lifestyle and academics. Not all of them, but many of them in those earlier years were men. There are far more female voices now in the space. So that's probably one reason. And then the other is maybe the nature of social media and community and it being a high-growth D2C e-commerce business. And that sort of lends itself to this assumption. But the reality is women for several years, certainly fueled, accelerated by COVID like everything. But in the last few years especially, you see this I want to live long and strong movement, that it's not about being frail or delicate. It's about fuel. It's about strength. It's about power and nutrition.
Kind of. Ozempic has sort of...
That's a new layer.
Changed
That's a fresh layer on this conversation for sure. But what I see in our customers is the threefold. One, women who want to live long and strong. The fastest growing customer group by age is 45 plus.
Interesting.
So also what I assumed is the customer not only leaned male and was younger. I was wrong on both accounts. It is equal women or was close to it when I joined and is literally equal now and definitely skews more mature. One, as we get older, we age into new reasons to need to supplement and want to supplement an already healthy lifestyle and certainly new ways to value and afford a premium product.
I was going to say, you probably have more money.
Sure, that's right. And then, but then when you look, it's like, okay, well, what about the younger customers? What do they value? And they tend to be athletes and fitness enthusiasts who really value their nutrition and take it more seriously. And that has evolved over time. So then I started interviewing our customers, our female customers in particular, in the early years when I joined. And what I found is they had heard about it from a partner, a trainer, a physician. So their recommenders tended to be male in those earlier years, but then they were more sticky customers in those early years. They didn't have as many options being marketed to them, to us, as we have now. Now we're in an interesting space where our split is 50-50, both for existing customers and new joining us. But women in particular, we are so marketed to in this space.
Yeah.
It is confusing. It is difficult to know what to trust. And we have so many distinct life stages, right? Younger, potentially childbearing years, pre- and postnatal, perimenopausal, menopausal, postmenopausal. And there's a lot of support that can come from nutraceuticals or nutrients to help with those life stages. So now the job to be done for our female customers is being really clear where we fit into their stack and in their life stages and why and how they can and should trust AG1 amidst the very confusing landscape of supplements.
I remember when I interviewed you about Milk Bar, and this was to do with Milk Bar's expansion into grocery aisles. You know, you mentioned the fact that Milk Bar could play in different aisles. You know, you had your ice cream, and then you had your savory snacks, and they were in different parts of grocery stores. What's your plan with AG1?
So the core, AG1, as this daily health drink in a powder form that people mix on their own in water or put in their smoothies, however they like, can go really far as it is. And retailers love this idea. One, it's a very straightforward supply chain.
Yep.
Right? It's shelf stable in its packaging. And there is built-in demand that is not necessarily being fully realized by the e-commerce platform. So retailers love the idea of a brand people know but haven't yet tried.
Yep.
And so there's brand awareness, product fit, the format makes sense. And this opportunity in some retailers, you can imagine some, that have a heavy inclination toward sampling and education and really letting people try and learn about a product before they buy. That's the opposite of our current model. If you hear about it, you go online, the best value is to subscribe. So you're actually subscribing before you try.
Yeah.
Retail and some of the retailers and some of these partnerships help us flip that, where people can taste it and try it and go, oh, it's green, but it's so much more than greens. I thought it was a little scary. Tastes better than I thought. This is interesting. I could probably stick with this. And really help us reach a customer that we haven't been able to reach.
That makes sense. The company, I'm not trying to be rude here, but it basically had a SaaS valuation in 2021. I mean, $1.2 billion is a crazy number for a CPG company. And I think we've seen a lot of CPG companies with those valuations struggle.
And that was on $160 million in revenue we did that year.
And you have investors, including Lewis Hamilton or Alex Honnold, that are probably curious when they're going to see a return.
Yeah.
Is the company ever going public?
Well, I won't speak to what the particular outcome is. There's a few things. I've had people ask this question, right? They're like, wow, you know, December of 21, January of 22, so still like peak fervor.
Yeah, exactly.
In the market.
It was just a crazy time.
Lots of froth.
Yeah.
However, the investors, the larger marquee investors who came to the table, they're super smart. You know, they saw the fundamentals of the business. We were $160 million in revenue that year, growing at hundreds of % with an incredible body of opportunity in front of the business. So if you look at what's happened since then, $160 million at the end of 21, we're projecting $600 million. We've well over 3x the business.
Yeah.
So even if valuations have come down to earth a bit, the business has grown unbelievably. And so our investors are very happy.
There's one skincare brand that gets to me a lot because they had a cream that was supposed to be the only one you were supposed to use. They were like, you throw everything in your bathroom. And then over the past few years, they've launched every
I totally
product
get what you're saying.
ever.
Yes.
You know
where
what
you're
I
going.
mean? And all of a sudden I'm like, wait a second.
Yeah.
What was this original message? What were you telling me?
Absolutely.
Could that happen with AG1? I mean, it's been so many years of like just this one thing.
Yeah. I will say it deeply affects what we decide to do.
Yeah.
I talk to our customers a ton. Our whole team does. It's mandatory. It's part of how we operate constantly. And we talk to our customers about new products. And our customers, our subscribers, our members are the first ones to trial our new products. And so they give us feedback. And our customers have asked us to launch so many things because they trust us. And they know the quality is consistent. But if we did it, it would create the confusion you just described, where it's like, wait a minute, I thought this did that job. So for us, how we think about it is AG1 is foundational nutrition. We authored a published peer-reviewed paper on foundational nutrition. Like, what is that? What does that even mean? It's just a term. So we're like, that's fair. Let's give it a definition. It's this idea that first and foremost, the best driver of health from a nutrition perspective is whole foods, period.
Yeah.
If you're not doing that, AG1 or anything else isn't going to be a silver bullet. So just to be clear, so no one thinks we're saying we're a meal replacement or that we replace a whole food diet, whole foods first. Then this idea of something called a foundational nutrition layer, which essentially is nutrients and gut health support. What do we lack most? Where are we most disrupted or most deficient? Key nutrients, key vitamins and minerals, and microbial diversity, essentially, or a healthy gut microbiome. And lots of things disrupt that. Stresses, pharmacological interventions, genetics, modern life, environmental toxins, right? And just the access we have to food or the nutrient density of our food. Foundational nutrition is an idea that there is such a thing as a group of supplements that help most people cover many of those gaps.
Yeah.
And
it's
again,
like how you can go buy a daily multivitamin.
it's like the future of what the multivitamin was supposed to be, except no one takes a multivitamin and says, my digestion's better. No one takes a multivitamin and says, I feel more energy, but they do with AG1 because it's more comprehensive. So it's this idea of nutrients, gut health support, and then two things that we don't put in AG1, but that we do offer to our subscribers. We actually don't sell it to the public. D3K2 and omegas. The reason we don't put it in AG1, one, D3 is fat soluble, not water soluble. So it needs to be in an oil, and it needs to be paired with K2 for optimal bioavailability and to not have negative downside effects. Also, D3, people need to modulate it very heavily. Some people need 1,000 IUs a day.
Yeah.
Some seasons you need 10,000. If we put a little tiny bit in
It's
AG1,
not really gonna make a difference.
it's not going to make a difference. It's not the optimal. We actually care about efficacy. So to be most efficacious for most of the population, it is separate. So we have a little dropper in an oil base, and then omegas.
That's what I add it to my smoothies.
That's right. And then the omegas, the reason we don't put it in is while there are high-quality plant-based omega sources, the highest quality is fish oils, right? But again, they're a really high-quality plant, but it's harder to get.
Yeah.
And so we have a fish-based fish oil omega-3s, and we don't put that in AG1 because AG1 is vegan. And we want to meet the commitment of being vegan. Also, it would taste like fish. And
Yeah,
so
that stuff, it tastes so bad.
that's right. So the full AG1 stack, even though people can't buy our D3 separately unless you're a customer and have access to our portal, is AG1, D3K2, omegas. That is the foundational stack. And so this idea of having a foundational routine is the base of the business. So as we innovate product, the question is, what do our customers need from us? And I'll just give you a few examples.
Yeah.
Might they be at different life stages? You can imagine what some of those might be that emulate some of the journey multivitamins went down.
Yeah. So if you're pregnant, for
maybe.
instance. Yeah, maybe.
Maybe. Or you have particular functional needs where AG1 is a great foundation. But we talk to our customers. I know that 30% of our customers add a certain supplement to their stack.
Yeah.
If I can do that with more rigor, more cost effectiveness, and more efficacy because it's synergistic, that's probably a good item to have considered on the roadmap. And it doesn't diminish what we have promised about AG1. It adds on to a subset who are already adding on. And there's a few other areas that are similar to that where it is additive to the AG1 routine. It does not dispel the efficacy of the foundational layer that AG1 represents today.
What are the most common things that people are adding to AG1 right now?
There's 3 buckets, and a few of them we're not going to get into. You know, we've decided we're a micronutrient company today, not necessarily a macronutrient. We believe macros are best from whole food sources. And then, of course, again, in the modern diet, sometimes we need to supplement, and that might be proteins or carbs or fats. So there are a lot of customers who are adding even more gut health support because they have acute gut health needs.
Gotcha.
And you can imagine, you mentioned GLP-1, but any pharmaceutical intervention that causes you to have lowered access to nutrients, aka eating less, or affects your gut function, AG1 is this incredible complement to your needs because it has always been nutrients and gut health. So if you're doing something that is compromising nutrients and gut health, AG1's already a layer. But there are people who have extreme gut health needs, right? Very particular disease states where they are adding on incremental support, and that is an opportunity for us. Certainly you have a world in which people are pursuing, cognitive health and cognitive support. And that could be a really interesting long-term product pipeline for us to think about because certain vitamins, minerals, and phytonutrients are well researched to support these needs. And so you think about where does what we do line up with a growing need? And then what is the availability of the supply chain at scale with the quality we require? And then does it make sense for us? And if so, when?
That makes sense. Well, those are pretty much all my questions. Kat, thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Okay, we are back with Katey Rich, and it's time to wrap up the show with Keeping Tabs. This is where each one of us shares a story, a trend, or a piece of pop culture we're following right now. And Katey, since you're our guest, what are you keeping tabs on?
Have you guys talked about the Traitors already on the show?
No, but I am here for it.
I can't make it through that show.
Really?
I actually
am obsessed with the Traitors.
I forget what's happened. I find it too convoluted.
That's fair.
But it's also it's kind of for dummies because not that much really happens.
No.
I was talking to
Tom Sandoval's on it. It's for dummies.
And
it's so funny because I said this to an exec from Universal. I was like, it's too convoluted. And she was like, it's not at all. And I was like, sick. Well, I feel
it's like, werewolf or mafia. It's literally like a party game.
Yeah, but I never enjoyed playing those games. It's so stressful.
I would be bad at being on it, but I enjoy watching it so much. And I don't really watch any of the other reality shows that they're drawing people from. So, I knew about Tom Sandoval and his whole mess, but I had never seen him on anything before. And so in those first few episodes, this is the guy who,
he looks so sweaty all the time.
He looks so sweaty and stupid and just, caught.
He's got dumb face.
Yeah, you can just see the gears in his brain, stuck at all times. But then the big recent twist is that he, figured out one of the traitors and had this huge triumphant moment. And everyone's like, oh my God, Tom Sandoval, who knew? This time of year, I'm catching up on Oscar movies and then starting with TV shows because Emmy season's right around the corner. And the Traitors won an Emmy last year, so it's relevant. But it's my one thing that's just nope, this is just for me. It's dumb and incredibly entertaining.
But it's just it's all about Alan Cumming.
Alan Cumming is so good. So he was a presenter at the Producers Guild Awards where I was there, and he was so good. He did a whole bit just for the room, and he needs to be hosting award shows very quickly.
Yes, I completely agree.
I also would love to see him pop up in the White Lotus or something.
Oh, he'd be perfect. I mean, Bartlett Sher in the White Lotus is of the same ilk as
I don't know. I have no idea.
Alan Cumming.
You mean Murray Bartlett?
Murray Bartlett. Bartlett Sher is a director on Broadway, a theater director. Sorry. Murray Bartlett. I'm a theater kid if it hasn't become apparent already.
Which is why you love Alan Cumming.
It is why I love Alan Cumming
Spy
overall.
Kids villain Alan Cumming.
But yeah.
Josh, what are you keeping tabs on?
Hard pivot I'm going to make to the NBA All-Star Game, but I'm not going to talk about the game itself. So the All-Star Game, if you're not familiar, has been a disaster for the NBA for about 15 years now, and it only got worse this past weekend. So I'm just keeping tabs on if they actually continue doing the NBA All-Star Game.
Wait, why has it been a disaster? In what sense?
So it just hasn't been competitive. The spectacle around it has really fallen off.
The big players don't want to do it, right?
Yeah, and it just becomes kind of like a joke of a game overall, and the whole weekend becomes really cringy, and they completely changed the format this year to this sort of round-robin tournament style, and it was still just the same issues overall. And then they inserted Kevin Hart into it to be kind of like an MC throughout the night, and Kevin Hart was terrible.
Oh,
the entire
really?
time.
God, I thought he was kind of bulletproof.
I feel usually he's pretty good at this stuff.
Yeah, you would think it was, but it's just it just doesn't work. And there's like a lot of money at stake for the All-Star game. Just like ad revenue alone is in the tens if not hundreds of millions of dollars for the
They will keep doing
weekend.
it then.
Yeah, but if this keeps going down and down, it's a lot of money to put on, and the ad revenue has been going down, but it's really more important for the host city. It's like hundreds of millions of dollars of economic impact for the host city, which was San Francisco this year, but it was like Indianapolis last year overall. But it's just been a mess, and it keeps getting worse and worse. So they either need to fix it or nix it or completely reimagine it. It was such a train wreck this past weekend.
Can I make a suggestion? Alan Cumming should host the All-Star game.
Yes, that's exactly what needs to happen.
Alan Cumming, no idea the rules of basketball. But
let him referee as well.
Let him redesign the uniforms because his traders' outfits are incredible. There's so much potential.
Yaz, what are you keeping tabs on?
So I have been so interested in Netflix stores in general, which are coming to malls. They will be selling merch. And I think of them as like, have you been to a Hot Topic recently? It's all Marvel merch. And I'm like, is that what these stores are going to look like? And I think it was this morning, maybe it was over the weekend. Meghan Markle had this brand initially called American Riviera Orchard. She was sending out jams to her famous friends. And then we didn't really hear anything about it for a long time. And then she just posted on Instagram that she's rebranding and calling it As Ever. And that all of that merch will now be available, I don't know if it's exclusively, but at least to start in these new Netflix stores.
Wow.
And I'm like really fascinated by how that works. Like, is it part of the deal? Did it get folded into the deal she signed with Netflix? Like, why did it take so long to get any produce out? What was the idea behind the rebrand? I know she has this new show. I guess maybe they want to tie it in more, but
Yeah, she's got that expensive deal with Netflix, so they may as well make some money off of it.
I'm very interested in this. I don't really know what to make of it.
I was on the Royals beat for a long time at Vanity Fair, and I like the fact that you just broke Meghan Markle news to me. I feel like my old instincts are falling apart. But yeah, like the Meghan and Harry question and like what they can do and what they can offer the world, I think is very much still open.
It's still open. And I also think on some level, it's like we haven't seen maybe as much as we wanted to. On the other side, I can imagine all the pressure there is from like many people wanting you to fail. Mm-hmm. That said, there's a lot of stans. I'm sure her brand will do well.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know, like, what her brand, like, what is her brand that makes you want to buy something the way that, like, Gwyneth Paltrow has pulled off? Like, it's, I mean, As Ever's a better name than American Riviera Orchard, I will say.
Yeah.
American Riviera Orchard is...
It feels like a Mad Libs, like...
Yeah, it does feel like a Mad Libs. But remember, it had that big launch video and everything, and then we just saw nothing for a long time. So, yeah, I'm interested.
I just want them to reboot Suits.
They did.
Suits LA.
Suits LA is out. Suits LA is coming on like soon.
I want some jam. I want a free sample of that jam.
That would be nice.
So
Netflix stores advertise on this podcast.
We would do an on-air taste test.
Oh, yeah. I would do that.
I would do
a social video with a taste test. We'll go to a Netflix store and taste test some stuff.
Yeah.
Netflix, Meghan Markle, get at us. I know your listeners.
I'm thinking of where the New York Netflix store will be, like Columbus Circle, like in the
Columbus
mall.
Circle seems great. Hudson Yards, I could easily see that.
But I'm also trying to imagine the merch, and it will be so weird. It'll be like weird, like Love Is Blind.
It'll be like Squid
merch.
Game, Stranger Things.
Stranger Things.
But can you imagine like fancy jams next to like Squid Game uniforms?
Yeah, that's a good question.
It's going to be very weird.
I assume Hot Topic is already selling a bunch of like Stranger Things and Wednesday merch. So this is probably Netflix being like, nope, we're taking that back.
I think so. That's it for Most Innovative Companies. Katey, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Our show is produced by Avery Miles and Blake Odom with help from Sam Gebauer and Hawa Atori. Editing by Matt Toder, mix and sound design by Nicholas Torres, and our executive producer is Josh Christensen. Remember again to subscribe, rate, and review, and we will see you next week.